Glenn Mead graduated from the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, as a commissioned officer. He then went on to become one of the youngest majors in the British Army before fulfilling several operational management roles for the likes of Ernst & Young, Capgemini and Accenture. Glenn's passion for psychology, for psychometric testing and for leadership behaviour led him to the Chimp Management Company, where he currently heads up their corporate programs. I, for one, am massively excited to hear Glenn speak. Please, let's all give a huge T2 Talks welcome to Glenn Mead.
Thank you. Great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Thank you also for Martin, for inviting us down to talk to you tonight. It's been a great evening so far. Particularly interested in Rosie's experience of marathon running and what she said about encouragement. I've done a handful of marathons. I've done the London 6 times. I'm one of these people who got stupid written across my head. And what I remember every time running it was, wouldn't it be a really good idea to have a T-shirt with my name on it? Because if anyone's thinking about doing a marathon, if anyone in the crowd shouts out, "Glenn!" it just gives you such a lift. And if you do spot someone in the crowd who you know, it's massive. The adrenaline rush and how it uplifts you. But a word of warning, a word of advice is if anyone is thinking about doing a marathon, just don't put your own name on the T-shirt. I reckon the one that will get the best result and best encouragement is the name that's spelled O-G-G-Y, Oggy. Because if you're running in the marathon and someone shouts out, "Oggy, Oggy, Oggy!" well, once you're warmed up, it works. Well, my wife's just recently got a place in the London Marathon. She's been applying for 5 years, and the ticket came through last week. She's still in shock, but she's got another 5 or 6 months to go. I'm going to be talking to you tonight about what is actually going on in your mind. And Rosie mentioned something about this thing being the most important for you if you want to achieve something in life. But before I get stuck into it, can I see a show of hands? Has anyone heard of this company called Chimp Management Limited? It's more than most people in most audiences. Has anyone heard of a book called The Chimp Paradox? Anyone a keen cyclist or a fan of Liverpool Football Club? I know I'm in the wrong city to ask that. I'm surprised how many people have put their hand up for the Chimp Paradox book. Has anyone read it from cover to cover? Okay, great. I'd like to have a few experts in the audience just in case I forget what I'm going to say. I can always pick on you to fill in the gaps afterwards. If you've not heard of Chimp Management Limited as a company, you can be forgiven for that. We're coming up for 4 years old now. We're a startup consultancy, 23 client-facing consultants, all trained in psychology, coaching or mentoring. I've got a background in psychology. I'm not a clinical psychologist, so if you're sat in the front table where I can see you, don't worry, don't get self-conscious all of a sudden. I'm not observing your behavior and making judgments about the way you're smiling or not smiling or avoiding eye contact, and what does that mean? I'm trained in occupational psychology, so I've got a background in organizations, change, stress, leadership, resilience, that sort of thing. But the rest of the company, I've got a shop window in elite sport. So the reason why the company came together was the success that Steve Peters, who's the chair of the company and the author of Chimp Paradox, had with the Team GB cycling team from the Athens Olympics and through Beijing through to London and Rio. And we've worked with lots of different teams, not just cycling, we work with canoeing, equestrianism, archery, wheelchair rugby, taekwondo. We even work with the winter teams, with the bobsleigh team. But the bit I run is only a small team. We work with organizations of all shapes and sizes. And the people we work with are no different to you. No different to you. The elite athletes are no different to you in the way that you use your brain to get the best out of yourself. How do you understand the way your mind works? How can you manage your emotions? How can you keep on course when everything else is saying to you is getting uncomfortable? How do you recognize what's going on inside your head and help you to get the best out of yourself? And when then say apply that knowledge once you've mastered your own emotions to helping other people get the best out of themselves. So that's the leadership element of it. And what we say is if you want to be successful in life, no surprise, most of it's down to you. It's about you being proactive, not sitting around waiting for it to happen because you're going to be disappointed, things won't happen. You've got to take the lead and be proactive, which means you've got to have a plan. And we say that the more that your plan is based on an accurate view of reality, what goes on in life, then it's likely to succeed. You'll stand a better chance of having the success you want. Also, if your plan is recognized and based on the values, the things that you find important in life, to you, to your business, those things that were mentioned about culture, If you recognize what those values are and put them into your plan, it's really important because it motivates you, pushes you along, encourages you to go that extra mile. But most importantly, when things don't go right or a situation has changed, you can sit back and say, hang on a minute, my values and our values dictated us making this decision, which right now might not be where we want to be, but we're not going to beat ourselves up for saying we should have made a different decision. So the more accurate the reality, your view of the world, the more focused in on your values, the more successful the plan's likely to be. And ultimately, can you put things in perspective? So when everything's going upside down and you're getting a result you don't want, can you step back and say, hang on, can we get a handle on this? Have we got a plan that's accurate enough to keep us on track? And if you can keep on track, then you don't feel you've fallen all the way from the top of the mountain back down to the bottom again. You've had a hiccup, you've had a glitch, you've had an error, but you can get back on track pretty quickly if you've taken the time to do that. So I know I'm preaching to an audience already of the converted. You're thinking, yeah, get on with it. We already know this stuff. Because you're in business and you're probably doing things like modeling, scenario testing, contingency planning on a daily basis. You've got a strategy, you've got a vision, you've got a plan, you've got your strategic objectives, and you're using this every day to manage yourself and your business. And this is all logical thinking. So what do you do in your plan to prepare for you when it all goes horribly wrong and your emotions come out? Do you stop to think about how will we react when we get a dreadful result? How are we going to react when the currency drops? How are we going to react when 3 of our staff leave the business and we're short-staffed and we can't get the skills we need? How are we going to manage? Do you plan in your emotional response? So the Chimp model and the way we apply it from the Chimp paradox to businesses is about saying you can't just rely on logical thinking. You've got to understand what's going on inside your head. And it's really, really important that the sooner you recognize what's happening, the better. So we like to think when something happens, our reaction to it is determined by what did you think was going to happen? What do you think the consequences are of the situation you're in now? What did you think has already happened to get you to this position? And ultimately, is there anything you can do about it? What is in your control and what's not in your control? And we encourage people to spend some time in reflective practice. And we say 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes a day, at the end of the day, just focus on you, although it feels very selfish to dedicate that amount of time to yourself. Stop, look at the back of the day and say, how am I? How am I feeling, thinking, and behaving? What happened today? What did I think was going to happen? How did I react to that? What did I do? What do I regret doing? What do I think was a mistake? What worked? And what have I learned from it? What could I do differently next time? And then the next day, before you come into work, you spend 5 minutes, selfish though it is, because you should be on the way to work, thinking, what have I got on today? Am I preparing myself for it? What might happen? What do I think might happen? And if it does go in a direction I'm not ready for, what can I do about it? What lessons have I learned yesterday which I can apply today? Most of us, I think it's fair to say, we have a stressful time at work, we get really busy, we just don't have time for that. And we push emotions behind us and they come out later on where we least want them to. And I think it was Einstein who said, if you don't take the time to stop and challenge what your expectations are, and you carry on doing the same thing again and again and again, but expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. So it's about stopping and taking the time to think about what do I think was going to go on, and what can I do differently next time? It's a learning cycle. So if we're thinking about being proactive and planning ahead, is it fair to say that the more time you spend in contingency planning, scenario testing, that if something were to happen, you'll be in more control of your reaction? Is it fair to say? Any nods? We've had our bar interval in the meantime, so it's probably delaying your response anyway. If you're thinking, saying, yeah, it's fair to say, the more I've thought about it in advance, the more prepared I will be. Well, that's the first mistake to make. We fall into this trap of thinking that's what goes on inside your head is totally under your control. The way you think, feel, and behave, totally under your control. Because you've got this concept that you've got this one brain and you're in charge of it, provided there's no malfunction, and you're using it to the best of your ability, and generally things are going fine. And the reason why this is dangerous is because when something goes wrong and you didn't expect it, you have an emotional reaction. You lose your temper, you get sad, you get worried, you try and avoid things, you shout at people, you feel that you're being threatened. And all this makes you then think later on, oh, why did I do that? What's wrong with me? I should be in control. Everything I do, the way I think, feel, and behave is down to me. And if you don't stop this cycle of thinking, I am in control, I must be in control. When I lose my temper and shout at my family, and I regret it later on, I'm going to beat myself up for that. So people get damaging emotions, they form destructive self-beliefs, and ultimately leads to a reduction in your quality of life. And then we apply it to other people. Why are other people acting in a strange way? Why are people getting aggressive with me in a meeting? Why are they avoiding my contact? Why are they just not responding to me at all? Why don't they pull themselves together in a bag of nerves? What's wrong with them? And some of us will get into this cycle of beating ourselves up with guilt, and then it results in a downward cycle. You beat yourself up even more. Others get afraid, get annoyed, and their anger involves them beating someone else up instead. Not necessarily physically, but verbally, with their outward expression of emotion, which then causes other people to move in the same direction. So you're not in control of the way you think, feel, and behave, and there's a good reason for it. But if you're still sitting there thinking, no, I'm not convinced yet, let's give you a scenario, a simple example that some of us will fall into, most of us will fall into at some stage in our lives, and it's healthy eating. Really easy one to pick on. We all know it's important to look after your health and the things you eat and drink. So you might say, I love donuts, and I know they're delicious, but not exactly nutritious. I need to cut down. So I'm going to use my willpower and my motivation to have just one donut a day. And I'm going to have it as a treat. I'm going to make it 3 o'clock every day, cup of tea and a donut, and that's going to be my little time where I treat myself. So you start off on this resolution. It might be New Year, it could be any time. You start off on the first day, 3 o'clock, cup of tea, donut, fine. Next day, a week goes in, a week goes by, month goes by, and you're 3 or 4 months into this, and your willpower is getting you through the donut phase. And then one day, something challenging happens at work, or at home, or in the commute between the two, and it's stressful, and you find yourself reaching for the donuts, but you've already had your first one, and you're going for another, and a second, and a third. And if it's a really stressful day, all 3 at the same time. And when you're eating them, it's satisfying something in your brain at a certain level. But that satisfaction rapidly drops off, and you're left with 2 presenting challenging issues. The first one, whatever caused the stress in the first place, and the second one, the dawning realization is that you're not in control. You can't even stick to one donut a day. What is wrong with you? And off you go. In that downward cycle of beating yourself. And some of you would just say, oh, don't give a stuff. I'm off the wagon as well now. Where's the wine? I'm going to have a glass of wine. Who cares? Because it's just too much for me. So if you think you are in control of what goes on inside your head, the way you think, feel, and behave, and you still think you're in control, let me ask you 2 questions. Why do you do things on a pretty frequent basis, I should imagine, that gives rise to emotions you don't want? Fear, anger, disgust, sadness, shame. Why do you do it? If you're in control, surely you say, well, I don't really want to do that. Second question, if you're in control, why don't you just turn these things off? You notice a pattern of behavior, and you think, well, I've been there before, I won't make that mistake again. Why do you do it? And why don't you turn it off? So I'm going to answer those 2 questions with a bit of a neuroscientific background to what's actually going on inside your brain. And I think the first thing that causes us to believe we're in control is that most of us misunderstand the brain. Unless there's any medics or brain surgeons or people who like to read about neuroscience as a sort of hobby, then most of us believe you've got this brain and it's under your control totally. What we actually misunderstand is inside your head, you are not alone. You are not alone in there. There are 2 of you in there, 2 independent thinking brains. One of them's been there running your life for you from the moment you were born, and it doesn't need the other one to keep you alive. Now, if anyone's breathing a sigh of relief and thinking, that explains those voices I keep having, that's not what I mean, but come and see me at the drinks afterwards and I'll chat to all 5 of you. Most of us don't understand the way the brain is developed. So I'm going to show you on this slide, it's the only neuroscientific one I'm going to use, about the way the brain is developed. So unlike other organs, like the heart, lungs, and kidneys, in the fetus, in the womb, over a period of 9 months, they've all grown as single cells and got bigger and bigger to form heart, lungs, kidneys. The brain has grown from about 7 independent cells inside what will become a skull. It's not even formed as the bones yet. And these brains develop at different speeds, and they send out neurons, and they link together, and they sort of introduce themselves to each other. And we know from looking under an MRI scanner, a functional MRI scanner, that some of these areas will work together as teams, some will fight, and some areas will be the team leader. Others can change allegiance very quickly, depending on what the function is. And we see areas of the brain lighting up. So I'm going to show you on this screen here a couple of principal areas which we know are in charge of particular functions. So the brain's facing that way. In your forehead, 40% of your adult-formed brain is this blue area, and it's called the frontal lobe, and that's dedicated to rational decision-making, executive functioning. No surprise it's 40% of it, because we're very good at using it. And in this area, it's your logical, rational thought, dealing with complexity, dealing with lots of data, dealing with the future and time. This part of your brain can see perspective, and it can plan ahead. It can plan your journey home tonight. It can plan what you're doing for the weekend. It can think about the strategy for the next 5 years. We call it your chief exec. It runs your life for you and your business for you. The next bit to look at is right in the center here, and it's an area called the limbic lobe, 2 component parts. Its function is a survival thinking brain. And it can only deal with right here, right now. It has no ability to deal with time. And it's taking in information through your sensory organs and saying, is there something in the environment right now that's a risk to me or an opportunity for my survival right now? So if I see something moving in my peripheral vision and I hear something over there in the corner where the photographer is, my brain, in this part of the brain, is picking it up. I cannot stop it, and it's making me look across there and saying, oh, something's changing in the audience. If I pick up something over here, I'll be drawn across there because this part of the brain is saying there might be something that you need to be aware of. You cannot help it. You will pay attention to it. And at the same time, there'll be an emotion laid down with all the experiences you're having. And it's encoding emotional memory. Do I feel scared? Do I feel happy? Do I feel in love? Do I feel jubilant? The next area to look at is just below that. That's all to do with factual memory. It's encoding things you learn. I know this is a computer screen. I've got a clicker in my hand. I'm wearing shoes. This is factual information. And we use this to make sense of life. Back towards the frontal lobe again, this green area, it's called the anterior cingulate cortex, and it's involved in making quick decisions about something's changed. Is it good or is it bad? It just gives you a value judgment, binary. It's either good or it's bad. What's happening? And the next bit to look at is this pink area called the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. This area is involved in theory of mind and compassion, understanding what is it like being you sat there watching this presentation. It's a rhetorical question, don't answer in case I get upset. We know this is involved in being able to understand how other people are feeling. In adolescent children, this is one of the last parts to develop. Anyone who's got adolescent kids, now you can understand why they just cannot see your point of view. And again, a bit of a grump about that. Now, when we put someone under an MRI scanner, the areas that light up when thinking is happening is on the cortex, the outer edge. And we know the blue part, your frontal lobe, your chief executive will light up. But in the womb, the red bit, red survival brain said, hang on a minute, my job is survival. I really need to be involved in some decision making. So an area is developed on the frontal lobe, just above your eyeballs, called the orbitofrontal cortex. And a pathway is developed from the red survival brain to this other area where it can now make decisions. It takes information in about the senses and it tries to make sense of what's going on. So that yellowy orangey bit is saying, I feel scared, but I'm going to look around in the audience and say, is there a reason to be scared right now? I'm not really quite sure. What behavior should I go for? Should I run around like a scared chicken or should I calm down because it seems socially appropriate thing to do? It tries to make a decision by saying, what's changed? Is it good or bad? Have I got an emotional memory? What's the facts going on? So when a message comes in, it gets passed up to these other three areas, the green area, the red area, and the purple area. It goes to the green, says, what's going on? Good or bad? Red, emotional memory. Purple, facts and evidence. And those areas give back their message. And as a result, if I can get the clicker to work, one more, yeah. As a result, that emotional thinking brain pulls it all together and says, we're going to take action right now. And you might find yourself getting agitated, going to fight, flight, freeze, or maybe things calm down. It depends on what's inside that part of the brain. At what stage in that decision-making process did you see your frontal lobe, your chief exec, in the front there, that blue brain, get involved with facts and evidence? Well, in that cycle, if there's an emotional memory from that red brain that is really powerful, it can send 30 neurotransmitters to your chief exec and says, right now, I'm going to put you to sleep. I don't want you getting involved with your rational, prevaricating, procrastinating, planning. Right here, right now, you're not going to get involved in any decision-making whatsoever. So you can do things that 10, 15 minutes later on, you regret and think, what was I doing? What was I thinking? You simply weren't. That frontal lobe probably didn't get involved at all. So this red brain and the link it makes towards the frontal lobe, if I'm going to move on, come on. That is a very important pathway. It's your impulse control. It puts the brake on something when you really want to go and do something emotionally. So it's the part that you learn to develop and learn to manage yourself with experience. But the thing is, these two brains, the thinking brains, the red and the blue, have developed at different speeds. The red was there right from the very minute you were born, and it's been keeping you alive ever since. The blue bit, your chief exec, can take up until you're 32 years old before it's fully formed. Hands up if you're under 32. Anyone? If Steve Peters was here and he's a clinical psychiatrist, he would say something technical like, you're not fully cooked yet. You're learning all the time. Your frontal lobe is developing all the time. And so is that orangey yellow part, orbitofrontal, is developing up until you're about 32 years old. So that red brain and that pathway has got a lot to answer for your behavior. Let's give you an example. Take a 3-year-old child who can walk and talk and do lots of things, is mainly red limbic. The frontal lobe is still developing. So you take that 3-year-old child to a park on a summer's day with the family, and there's a playground, and they've got a ice cream cone and a Mr. Whippy and a chocolate flake, and they drop their ice cream on the floor, kersplat. How does the child react? My ice cream! My ice cream! I was really enjoying that. The child doesn't know it's not the end of the world. It's just an ice cream. Don't worry about it. The adults with that child will say, oh, should we go and buy another one? Should we go and play on the slide? Oh, look, there's a butterfly. There's some fish. Take your mind off it. But the child has had an emotional reaction, and I was going into his memory of ice creams dropping on the floor. Not good. Not happy with that. But its frontal lobe is still developing. It's learning these emotions. And it's developing at a certain speed. The child then goes off to nursery, goes off to kindergarten. They're getting socialized. So that yellow-orangey bit is now understanding, although this is how I feel, this is how I can behave. So at kindergarten, they sit down at little tables, they learn their alphabet and the times table, and they do coloring and sticking and singing songs, and they play and they learn to share. And they learn also that if you're in the playground in the sand pit with a bucket and spade, and little Johnny comes up and tries to wrench the bucket out of your hand, if you punch him in the face hard, he'll cry, and then the teacher will come over and say, you're very naughty, go and sit on the naughty step. And then you'll cry, and you'll realize that sometimes when you feel like doing something and it upsets someone else's emotions, they're going to cry, and you're going to get rejected and told off, and you're going to cry, and you're going to develop this pattern that says, if I upset other people, I will not be approved of. I will feel guilty and ashamed of myself if I upset someone. And it's all that pathway, that red to yellow-orange pathway is forming. You're starting to learn that, although it's how I feel, maybe I should manage myself in some other way. Then the child grows up, goes to primary school, secondary school, adolescence. Let's not go there. During which time they hate the mum, they hate the dad, hate the teacher, hate their brother and sister, and they're going to run away and join the circus. And if you're a parent, you're saying, can you hurry up and do it? Please leave quickly. And then they get into adulthood, and the frontal lobe is still developing. And they get into their first job, and they're a responsible adult, by which time they should have learned some self-control, that in your meeting with your boss, and they pick out a mistake in your spreadsheet, or a spelling mistake on your PowerPoint slide, or they shout at you for being late, although you feel you want to do something, it's not appropriate to throw a glass of water over them, to stamp your foot, and fold your arms, and not come out, I'm not playing today, or run away in tears, or don't go to work. You just don't do it, because your frontal lobe has said, this is not how we behave. The red bit is saying, bloody right we do, when we want to. So you're trying to manage it all the time, these two thinking brains, and it's a constant struggle to try and make it happen. So that pathway from red to orange-yellow, if it's not fully developed, or there's a deformation of it in the brain, there's a pathological reason why your behavior can be a little bit odd. Your social behavior can be pathologically determined by what's already in there. Socially, pathologically, sociopath, there we go, psychopath, sociopath. Someone who's got a reduced bandwidth on that bundle of nerves might not develop a guilt complex that says, when I upset you and your emotions, I don't get any regrets. I don't worry about it at all. I don't get any hang-ups about telling you exactly what I feel about you or putting something interesting in your cup of tea, because it's no big deal to me. So the incidence of psychopaths in the UK population is about 1 in 150 people have a psychopathic tendency. It doesn't mean to say they're going to be violent. If you have 4 psychopaths in a room, it sounds like the start of a really bad joke, but it isn't. One of them might be violent. The other 3 don't necessarily think violence is appropriate, but they might be able to make people redundant, step on top of people for career progression, knife them in the back, metaphorically, and just don't worry about it. You could argue that's a very good skill set to have in business. I think there's some US research that says there's a correlation between people with psychopathic tendency and their ability to get to very high executive level in big organizations. How many chief execs in this room? If you want to tell a psychopath in a room, they tend to be male, it's hereditary, they don't blink as frequently as other people, and they don't suffer from group contagion effects, which means social phenomena like yawning. Yawning is infectious. You heard people say, oh, when someone yawns in the audience, it ripples across, you don't really know why. Psychopaths don't pick up on that at all. So I know it's late evening presentation, you've had busy days, you've had a glass of wine. Yawn as much as you want. I will feel much more reassured up here, even fall asleep if you need to. So let's see how this brains work under a particular order. Depending on the strength and the power of them, they react in a particular way. So what happens when you get a message come into your brain? You get a message that says, right now, I've heard another executive in the business talk about you, and they said that you're incompetent, the job you do isn't very good, you can't manage anything at all, your interpersonal style is dreadful, and actually no one likes you, it's about time you left. The message comes into your brain through that red section, through your sensory organ. It goes into the bit that's trying to make a decision. It says, what's going on right now? I need to understand. Let's go to that green, red, and purple area. Let's give some information back. The green says it's bad, it's very bad. The red bit says, I've got an emotional memory here, and you're under attack. Go and kill the person who said it. and it starts overriding your chief exec. And the red bit in this section has already decided what's going to happen. Your chief exec is left out of it. And now you find yourself taking action. The red brain in the center has been doing it ever since you were born. It's keeping you alive, it's super vigilant, but it's making you put your foot in it before you know it. And I'd like to introduce you to yours. You've got this brain, and it's called your inner chimp. It's keeping you alive, understand what's happening. It makes you make decisions and react emotionally very, very quickly. But you later regret what's going on. We've simplified this and put it into this model called the Chimp model. 3 component parts to it. In your frontal lobe is the human. This is your chief exec. Rational decision making, getting on with your job. In the center, the chimp. It's trying to stay alive, and it can only think right here, right now. And it's working on emotions. And the third part of this machine is what we call the computer. All your memories and your experience are being stored in there. And it's stored, and it runs your life for you based on what experiences you've had. So you've got to understand the human and the chimp and how they input information through the way they think, feel, and behave. So let's have a quick look at the human. This is you. You live in a society based on values of having honesty, compassion, conscience, law-abiding. You've got a sense of how to manage yourself and have self-control, developing with time. You have a sense of purpose, and you want to achieve things in life. You come to work to do a good job. And the way your chief exec works is based like this. It's all on logic. We're going to look at the evidence. We're going to make a rational approach about using this evidence. We'll keep things in perspective, and we're going to see the shades of grey. And we're very, very quick at how to make those decisions. But we take our time to ponder it. But your chimp is very, very different. It says, no, sorry, I haven't got time for that. I live in the jungle, and there's danger all around. It's fight, flight, freeze. I need to feel secure. I need to have parental instinct. I need to look after my team and be part of that troop without fear of rejection. So I'm going to do things that say, can you approve of me? Can I stay with you? I'm going to look after my territory, because if I'm in control of my territory and my patch, it's more likely I'm going to stay alive. And I've got power and ego, and I have food. These things make you go and do things very, very quickly. So the chimp thinks very differently to the human. The way it does it, it says feelings and impressions. No time for facts and evidence. I'm going to make a judgment really quickly. I'm going to look around for emotional thinking, jump to conclusion, look at things in black and white because there is no time for anything else, and I'm going to become paranoid. I've made a decision, and I'm going to reinforce it with my beliefs after that. And if need be, if it's something that's going badly wrong, it's not just badly wrong, it's catastrophic. It's the end of the world. And it's going to be the biggest disaster ever. But it can also become overconfident, over-optimistic. It can be happy at the same time and still miss information. And it will use illogical reasoning. 2 + 2 = 7. Why is that? Because 7 is the number I've already reached. Everything else is just going to be shoehorned into the way I'm thinking right now. And it'll use emotive judgment. If I'm already feeling scared, I'll look for evidence that says I'm scared. And it's normal to feel that way, to feel nervous when giving a talk to people, to give bad feedback to someone, to have to do something that says, this is uncomfortable, but I need to stick on the course. The chimp brain is saying, do something right now. Fight, flight, freeze. Dominate or run away if you can. And it happens super, super quick. Message comes into the part of your brain, that red area. It goes to the chimp first of all, and the chimp is stressed and he's not sure what to do. It'll rule out your human. Then goes to the computer and says, what's in there? What memory, evidence, emotions have I got that's going to help me make a decision? And the computer will try and offer something. And if the chimp likes it and calms down, then the blood flow will come back to that human. And that's when you regret what you've done. You think, oh no, what did I say in that meeting? What didn't I say when I really could have been assertive and said something? Where have all the donuts gone? It wasn't you doing it. You can't override your chimp with the human. All you can do is program the computer ready for next time. What have I learned today? It's happened. What am I going to do differently next time? The chimp is 5 times more powerful than the human. The computer is 20 times faster than the human. So if your computer is loaded, then you're going to be fine, provided something in there is very, very useful. Let's have a look at when it goes wrong with people who haven't prepared. This is taken from the Athens Olympics. We're looking at the diving, synchronized diving, final dive of the day. You've got 3 teams looking to get a medal. Chinese going for gold, Russians for silver, Americans for bronze. And the Greeks are taking part because they're the host nation. They have no expectations of winning. Now, as we start this video clip, the proceedings have been brought to a halt because a member of the public wearing a tutu and a t-shirt with a mobile phone number and has dived into the swimming pool. So everyone's been told, step back while we go and get a harpoon to get this guy out. Watch what effect is happened on the elite teams as they try and go and get on with giving the dive of their lives, expecting to get a medal. So there's the unexpected item in the diving area. Chinese expecting to get the gold medal. Next up are the Russians. Look at the diver nearest to the camera as he goes down, as you hit his feet on the board. And finally, the Americans in bronze position. And these are the Greeks who have no expectations of coming anywhere. So the first 3 dives were all no dives, 0 points. The Greeks weren't technically perfect, but it wasn't a no dive. They got the points, went straight and got the gold. So what effect does being prepared have on you, or being unprepared? How can you manage yourself in work when you have some unexpected situations? Have you thought it through? Have you considered how you're going to react emotionally to these situations? Because there is no guarantee in life apart from death and taxes. Everything else is probability. How are you going to manage that? Are you going to be able to measure it and say, okay, roughly we're on target? How are you going to stay that course? Do you have an emotional reaction that pushes your thinking into distorted emotional thinking rather than logical? How do you help each other do that? The Chimp says, I don't want guarantees of things going badly wrong. I want guarantees of things working. It's looking for the reward, not the pain, not the pleasure and the pain together. It wants to be secure, strong, confident. It says, I'm going to avoid anything that says I'm going to be insecure, weak, or not very good at what I do. And if you get stuck down that end, you're getting someone who's heading towards breakdown. You need to stop this and say, no, we're on a perspective, we're on a spectrum somewhere. Similarly, if they're on the other end and they're stepping inside their comfort zone, they're not stretching. They've got to experience a bit of suffering in order to grow. But our language has evolved in a different way, and we tend to use things like good and bad. What is good without bad? What's bad without good? We're on a perspective somewhere, on a spectrum. I need to say, this is where we're meant to be. This is where we currently are. How are we going to bridge that gap between the two? And use your rational brain to observe and examine what the evidence is objectively. Be uncertain. Don't be confident that you're going to be failing or winning. Just be objectively uncertain about it. And say to yourself, well, we're quietly confident. We can make a difference here because we've got a track record of it. Let's be rational as we examine that, but don't deny what the emotions are. So what I urge you to do after this, we're coming to finish now, is 5 minutes at the end of your day. Find a tree somewhere, probably a bamboo one, sit in it, and spend some time thinking about the way you think, feel, and behave. If you don't do that, you're going to deny yourself the chance of having an even better day tomorrow. Thank you very much.